This is Pastor Gabriel Swaggart, and welcome once again to our daily webisodes. And today we're going to be discussing the subject, the topic of fallen from grace. Now we may have to do about one or two little video blogs on this subject, maybe not, but this is something that we need to really understand. You see, there's a term that whenever a person who is of some notoriety, or even a person in the church, when they make when they fail, and the people around know, the first instinct and the first thought is, well, that person has fallen from grace. Well, that's not really what that means, and we're going to look at that a little bit closer here today. I want you to look with me in Galatians chapter 5, and I'm just going to be reading a couple of verses, beginning in verse 2. Galatians 5, verse 2. Behold, Paul will say, I, Paul, say unto you, that if you be circumcised, Christ shall profit you nothing. For I testify again to every man who is circumcised, that he is a debtor to do the whole law. Now listen to verse number 4. Christ is become of none effect unto you. Whosoever you are justified by the law, you are fallen from grace. Now let's look at this for a moment. I want to look at that word fallen. That word fallen means, of course, to fall away. It means to move away, to go away. And when you really look at this subject, what it really means is to fall away from the grace of God. You've fallen from grace. You have fallen away. And what the Apostle Paul in here is saying is that when a person ignores the cross of Christ as the means of not only salvation but of sanctification, they completely ignore it. I'm not talking about those who just don't understand it. I'm talking those who heard it, who have it has come to their attention, and they flat ignore it. That means fallen from grace means to simply ignore the finished work of Christ and to put your trust into something else altogether. Now this is very important, and we've got to understand this. Fallen from grace means to turn away or ignore the finished work of Christ and to put your trust into something else. Now, like I said, it's two totally different things. I'm not talking about someone who doesn't understand the message of the cross and therefore, like all of us, have put our faith in something else, not realizing it, not understanding. I'm talking about those who they know this message. They know it's right, but they ignore the finished work of Christ and refuse to put their faith in that finished work and put it into something else. That person has fallen from grace. Now let's look at this. All grace, not some. I know a brother wrote me not too long ago and said that some grace comes through the cross. No, all grace comes through the cross of Christ. As I mentioned yesterday, the greatest display of God's grace that has ever been seen is the cross, what Jesus Christ did. All grace comes through the cross. When our faith is anchored in the cross of Christ, that means that everything that we will ever be in need of flows to us through the means of the cross. Frustrating the grace of God, as we dealt with the last couple of programs, means that you hinder it. You stop. It's not just stopping, but you just hinder it. Whereas fallen from grace means you stop it completely. When your faith is anchored in something other than the cross of Christ, knowingly, willingly, you willingly ignore the cross and willingly place your faith in something else, whether it be traditions of men or what have you, that person has cut off the grace of God completely from flowing in their heart and in their life. Now think about that statement. That is a heavy, heavy statement. The other day, when I say the other, this was years ago, I was preaching at a church at a particular eastern seaboard state. And I had I had to do something there that was really not pleasant. I had to correct some things, and that was not pleasant to do. But I was told at the end of the meeting, whenever I left, the pastor of the church got up and said, "We're not going to go the way of the cross anymore. We're not going to do it. We're going to do something else." That person, knowing that the message has come to them, and they willingly reject it, ignore it, that person has fallen from grace. They've stopped the grace of God from flowing. That's a pretty heavy statement. Once again, I know that some people will use the terminology that when a person fails, they've fallen from grace. However, that's not true. When a person fails and they continue to trust the Lord, that person hasn't fallen from grace at all. That's when they need the grace of God the most. It's when a person discontinues to trust God. It's when a person willingly puts their trust in something else. We're talking about a believer here, a quote-unquote believer, a person who claims to be saved. When a person places their trust in something else altogether and ignoring the cross, they willingly ignore. That's a term. I'm trying to get this and hammer this point home. They willingly ignore the cross of Christ as the means by which all grace flows. Then that person has cut off the grace of God and has fallen from grace. It means to apostatize. The church, by and large, has apostatized, which means that they are ignoring the cross of Christ as God's prescribed order of victory and trying to depend on something else that they have purported of their own making as a means to victory. When they do that, automatically they're fallen from grace. You cannot have one foot in the grace of God and one foot in law willingly. You can't. You're going to have to choose. Most in the church, many in the church, are unwilling, or that's not the word. They're ignorant of the fact that God has a prescribed order, and therefore all they know is law. There are others who know the message of the cross is right, or they have heard the message of the cross and they have rejected it outright and said, "No, that's not it. Our way is it." You can't have it both ways. You're either going to accept Christ, which means you accept the grace of God flowing in your heart and life on a daily basis, or you reject the cross of Christ, which means you reject the grace of God from flowing. You can't have it both ways. So to fall from grace means a person willingly rejects or ignores the cross of Christ as a means of victory, and really of anything, as the means of anything, because everything comes to us on the basis of the finished work of Christ. And they place their faith in the traditions of men. That person has cut off the grace of God. It's like you've turned that spigot off completely, where nothing can flow in the way that it needs. So today, my question is, which way are you going to go? You can't have Christ and law. You're going to have to make a choice, to make a decision. You accept law, reject Christ, you've fallen from grace. You accept Christ, reject law and traditions, the grace of God flows. You may make a mistake. You may frustrate the grace of God. But at least when you turn your eyes back to the Lord and what He did for us at Calvary's cross, that grace can begin to flow once again. It's when you stop trusting, ignore the cross, stop trusting in what Christ has done, and turn to something else. That is when you fall from grace. So I hope that this has helped you some. And I pray that it is ministered to your heart. And so I'm going to ask you, as we close here today, why don't you tell others about this little daily video blog, these webisodes, and why don't you send it to others? You can tweet it, you can take the link, what have you, and share it with whoever you want to share it with, and we would be glad for you to do that. And it may cause some to not like it, but that's okay. But send it out, tweet it, whatever you want to do. Make sure you share it and tell others about this little podcast, not a podcast really, but tell others to subscribe to this YouTube channel and tell others about what the Lord is doing in your heart and life as well. We love you. God bless you. We'll see you next time.